Okay. Let's dive into the Memphis Grizzlies and particularly Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren Jackson Jr. to start this season is blocking 3.6 shots per game. That is outrageous. That is like, I can't remember. I'll look this up while you're breaking down Jaren Jackson, but I can't imagine we've seen someone block 3.6 shots per game in a long time. And there are a couple of things that Jaren has really improved at. I mean, when he came out of Michigan State, I think he was seen as like the switchy big, but I think his positioning and drop coverage has really, really improved. I think that his ability to kind of corral and contain drivers has really, really improved. I think that his weak side instincts have also really improved, and he's even rebounding a little bit better than what we've seen from him previously. He just feels and seems a little bit more capable of anchoring his position and his spot on the floor and maintaining his ground without giving too much of it away, both when trying to establish himself when boxing out on the glass and when trying to contain and corral drivers that can't just try and go through his chest and try and draw a foul or try and just like blow his way through the rim, right? What have been your immediate impressions of Jaren Jackson Jr. and just how valuable do you think he has been defensively this season?
Yeah, so even before we mentioned the defense, like I think what has been like I mean, we're here to talk about the defense, but like I feel like it's almost gone underwrought how important the offense has been this year. Like
yes.
Shooting 61% on twos, by far a career high. Shot 47.6% on twos for reference on what it was last year. That was, obviously a drop off from where he'd been. But like he can actually post up now. I think that there's just a little bit more coordination with the ball in his hands. He feels a little bit stronger in his base. Somebody, I can't remember who pointed this out, but like his stride length just feels more correct when he's driving and putting things together as a finisher. He just feels under control in a way that he really never has felt fully in his career consistently. And that to me has been like, he's gone from a guy where playing him at the 4, if the shot wasn't falling, was really difficult, to now, like, I still think like ideally you want him to be playing the 5 a lot, but for what this does, figuring out passing is, I don't know if that's ever going to be something that we fully see from Jaren. But what he started to round into now, you finally are starting to get like that full idea of like, this is a guy who can get to the rim, who can really shoot off movement, and then be an absolute menace defensively. And like you mentioned defensively, like watching him in that game against the Pistons, like granted, it's the Pistons, but also, I mean, he was what I always look for in terms of like what is standing out as like a DPOY type play is like a guy who is blowing up plays before they can happen, like before they're even like starting to really get there. And it feels like he made like 12 of those plays in each half, which is like remarkable to watch. And it's not even like you're mentioning, it's not even just like the actual steals and blocks. He's combining for 4.6 stocks right now, which is, like you mentioned, just kind of astronomical. But it's just the activity's been really good, but it's also been like controlled activity, like you mentioned too. Like it feels like, again, kind of like in tune with talking about his offense, his base is stronger. He feels more coordinated and moving in multiple planes, because that's been a big issue for him, and why he's struggled with fouling is like his upper body is like rarely ever felt in sync with his lower body. And now it kind of feels like he's really getting that down. And that's been frightening for teams playing the Grizzlies right now, because he's been just incredibly impactful around the rim. And obviously not just around the rim, like his drop defense has been really good. His hands have been active. He's incredibly mobile, of course. Like he's just been a pleasure to watch, and it's awesome to see him healthy and hitting this level.
Okay, Mark, trivia time. When was the last time a player averaged 3.6 blocks per season or more
in a full season? I know Miles Turner was close a couple years ago before he got injured, so it ended up not being him. This is a random shot. Didn't Theo Ratliff do that once? I think he was close.
So it's not Theo Ratliff. He probably did it once or twice.
Oh, you were okay.
It's not that far
straight
back.
Up. Who was the last person? Yeah, because I was just thinking about that. Most
maybe
can I get like a
maybe
year range?
2016 is the year.
2016. Who was good in 2016? Oh, obviously the Warriors. 2016. Shit. Okay, give it to me. I'm lost.
It is Hassan Whiteside.
Oh my God.
In
Okay. All right.
2016.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll go with a
that
better
it?
trivia
Yeah.
time. Who is the last good defender to average 3.6 blocks per game? This was in 2012.
In 2012. Is that Kevin Garnett?
It's not Kevin Garnett.
It's not Kevin Garnett. No, I'm thinking way too far. Wait, not far. I mean, too far back. 2012. Oh, was it Serge Ibaka?
If Serge Ibaka. There we go. Mark goes 1 for 2. I love it.
There we go.
And Serge, look, early in Serge's career, he was impactful as a weak side rim protector, particularly, but I don't think he ever quite got to the point that Jaren is at now as an overall defender. You can switch Jaren. Jaren can be out on an island with a guard, and I feel pretty good with it, or at least as good as I do with other bigs outside of like Bam Adebayo, right? Bam is the best switch defender in the NBA among bigs. Jaren is, would you say that next step down, I would say, or would you even go 2 steps down?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Bam's in his own bracket because he's just special with what he can do. Like, I mean, looking at, I don't know if you got to watch last night's Pacer game, but he just kind of took Tyrese Halliburton out of the game. It was incredible stuff to watch, and we're going to talk more about it. But like, yeah, I think he's probably 2 tiers below. Like he's still very, very good, but that's just more like Bam is one of one in what he does.
100%. But what Jaren has been able to do is he's able to combine now that switching with the perimeter defense. He's improved his anticipation all across the court, I think, to the point where it's now very difficult to get away from him. I feel like he's almost omnipresent. It feels like defenders just are. There are sometimes defenders that you can scheme out, right? Like you can find a way to like hide Kawhi Leonard's man like in the corner or something like that. You can particularly do it a little bit easier, I think, with wing defenders, or like with Draymond Green, you can try and involve him in like more on-ball action so he can't be as much of a menace away from the ball. Like I often think that's even a little bit better of an idea than what teams tend to do, which is just allow him to be a menace off the ball. Jaren is so rangy and so big while being mobile and now having the anticipation. It feels hard to get him away from everything, don't you think? Like it's just hard to get him out of any action that you run. Like even if he is guarding like a corner shooter or something like that, like he can take 2 strides and be there. And then if you kick out, like he's pretty good at closing out on shooters now to where like, yeah, he's probably going to be a little bit under control or out of control just because every 6'11" guy is going to be somewhat out of control closing out to a corner shooter from time to time. But like, I don't know, man. It's just hard. Like it's really, really hard to keep him out of the play now, I think.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think, I mean, that like you mentioned, it's a select group of guys that can actually do that. And he's hitting that, which has been really impressive. And I think it speaks to the Grizzlies defense as a whole because they're so good at just being solid. And when you add somebody like that who can really wreak havoc when you are able to stay solid, that just brings them to another level. Because I think like we've mentioned on here before, like the Grizzlies have been solid defensively even before Jaren got back. Like they've been looking, they've found ways to continually be better. And again, like you're mentioning, I think just bringing that in is they're hitting new heights. And I think this Grizzlies team just continues to really, I shouldn't be surprised by them anymore, but they always just kind of find ways to be a little bit surprising in what they do. And I'm very excited to watch what they continue to do as guys can keep coming back and getting healthy. Because like Zaire Williams, I want to say the Pistons game was his first game back. It was his first or second game. He's finally back. There have been the rumors that he's just magically taller now, and it kind of looks like it on court. And I'm just Desmond Bane coming back hopefully soonish. This team's fun.
Well, and so you brought up the idea that they were pretty solid defensively without Jaren. So without Jaren Jackson on the court this year, they have a 113 defensive rating, which is like the equivalent of the 17th best defense in the league. So right around league average, right? With Jaren on the floor, they're at 105.4, which would be the best defense in the league. Now, like look, it's probably not the best defensive lineup in the league. I would imagine that some combinations that Milwaukee puts out there, particularly with Giannis and Brook Lopez, are more effective defensively. But I think it goes to show just how good the Grizzlies defense is with Jaren out there. And they are going to get Bane back. And I think that's going to add to their defense more than it subtracts to their defense, certainly, because just putting his minutes, put him in 30 minutes a game where he's a pretty solid defender who's always under control in closeouts and is a tough physical defender who you really just can't blow through as a driver at all. Like, yeah, he struggles with contests from time to time just because of the short arms, but like he's just always there, it feels like, to at least get something of a contest, even if it's not quite as impactful as it could be with someone like Mikal Bridges. That taking those minutes away from guys like David Roddy, Jake LaRavia, etc., it's really going to help their defense. Like this is a really good team. Now, the question I have for you, is this an NBA title contender? I talked about this with Dave before over on Friday/Saturday, depending on which country you live in. Hi, fellow Australians. I am very intrigued by the fact that I think this really could be. Jaren Jackson being as good as he is defensively now, mixing that with Ja Morant and Desmond Bane on the perimeter, they might be one piece away, but like with how wide open the West is, I kind of wonder if they are.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question. I do still feel like there may be just like one depth guy short, like in terms of having somebody who can really create for themselves and others. I think that's like, again, like even going back to last year, I think that's like the one thing that they miss. Like obviously Desmond has made those strides and that's not to take away from that, but I do think it's more just, I feel like they need that. They do struggle to have at least two guys like that on the court at all times. I feel like even when they do stagger, I think that can tend to be a problem because as much as like Tyus Jones is awesome, but I still always feel like with him, I'm like, I just wish that he would take a few more shots. Like I feel like there's always just a little bit left on the table with him. But again, that's nitpicking. Like that, I still think this group, like what's so exciting about them is even though they're so young and they are built relatively new still, when you're thinking about like John, Jaren still being just about rookie skill guys. Same thing with Desmond Bane. Like they have real playoff experience. Like they've played three rounds in the last 2 years now. And I would not pick against them. I think that with what they bring matchup wise, how they can be so versatile, the ability, like they really have the ability to, it's not to the same level as the Pelicans, but in terms of what they bring with just multiple guys who can do quality things on court, there's not a lot of teams that I think are going to be able to match up with that. And it's more so too, like if they're healthy, which this feels like, knock on wood, but this does feel like their healthy year. They're getting the injuries out of the way early, because it's always been late in the year that it's really bit them. I think that I don't want to say that they're a contender, but I don't want to say that they're not either. Like I think that if they ended up making the Western Conference Finals, I wouldn't be shocked. Is how I would put it right now. But I still feel like they're maybe just a little bit away from where I would view them as like this is a full-on contender. But that could even just maybe next stretch of play really changes my mind on that too.
So what? They have like an 8-man rotation right now. Desmond Bane, John Morant, Dylan Brooks, John Conchar. Maybe you play 15 minutes of Steven Adams in the playoffs. Jaren Jackson, Tyus Jones, Brandon Clark. And then you have Santi Aldama, who is a wild card in the playoffs, I think, at the very least.
Yeah. I've loved his play this year, though. And he's been on a heater the last week or two.
Absolutely love Santi. I think that he is a very real potential like NBA starter at some point, even given how good he has been so far. But there are questions about what that's going to look like in the playoffs, I think. Right now, with him at 22 years old, that is. David Roddy and Jake LaRavia and Zaire Williams, all three of those guys. Zaire played a role last year for sure. And if he can bring the offense in a way that he hasn't always been able to, like through a year and 3 games worth of play, maybe he can be the guy. But I agree with you. Like if I was them, I'd be trying to go out and find like one extra guy. What would you be targeting if you're them?
It's a great question. I think to me, they're like I wouldn't go in for one of the medium deals right now. I think this is very much like a if we can get Jordan Clarkson, that's sick type solution. Not saying that he's like the guy, but I think in that mold of and it seems like just to say as well, like I think Tony Jones is like not reported, but I know that he said like the Jazz are not really at all keen to move on from Jordan Clarkson. They really like him. He really likes being in Utah. But like I think that ilk of player, like somebody who can come in and be like a super six man for them, who can really kickstart some offense.
Yeah.
I think that's what I look at. Even as much as I love Bojan Bogdanovic and what he could be for them, I do just wonder how much that they'd have to give up because of what that's going to look like salary wise to match. I do feel like that's where you start getting into more territory where like, okay, if we're not certain that this is like really pushing us to the next year, which I think Bojan could actually, because that's the only, like they do lack movement shooting outside of Desmond Bane still. But I mean, I think I view them like somewhere in that range. Like if like some massive thing opened up for them to get a star player, which that's granted, that's not like on the table right now. I do think that I'd love to see them be the team that makes that move. But that's partially why I'm like, I don't know if I would go for a mid-tier deal right now, because what if that changes in the offseason? Like what if there is a team in the offseason where I don't know who to say, but like if somebody does become like a top 15 player becomes available, you don't want to have moved some of your chips already that would have really helped you make that be a possibility. So I do feel like they have to tread the water a little bit on that.
The team I'm looking at kind of in both respects of that continuum, right? Like, good solid offensive creator or trying to go get the superstar is the Washington Wizards.
Yeah.
I wonder if they could be like a real player for Bradley Beal as a guy that like, look, we talked about it in the show before. I don't know if you and I have, but like, the Grizzlies, they look for good dudes that are just like going to be smart, highly competitive, tough dudes that I really think that like Bradley Beal certainly fits like the great guy, like really good locker room person, like very clearly loyal in a real way. I wonder if he kind of really fits next to a Ja Morant and a Desmond Bane. Bane's floor spacing and shooting, Ja Morant's explosive athleticism, Beal's ability to create shots kind of from all three levels, I think would be really valuable for them in the playoffs potentially. Or if they decide to not go that route, Kyle Kuzma has been really good this year. Pimp Ron 18 in the comments on YouTube brought up Kyle Kuzma as an interesting suggestion here. Kuzma's averaged 21 points a game. He's shooting threes at higher volume than ever while still making about 34% of them. I don't mind that, actually. Like, that's kind of an interesting player for them, I think. He's expiring at the end of the year, so like if it doesn't work, you can move on and just be cool with that. Like 6'9", okay defender, like not a bad defender by any stretch of the imagination, has turned into a switchable solid guy at least. That's not neither of those options, like depending on which route they go, I wonder if the Wizards and Grizzlies kind of line up in terms of potential reasonings and potential moves that could be made on the trade market.